2026 is going to look a bit different. Many teams looking to find new head coaches and hopefully put their team in Super Bowl contention yet again. Teams like the Ravens, the Giants, and the Falcons, who all made these grand moves to hopefully get them over the hump. And then there's the Steelers, who just got another mic.
Welcome back to the James and Dames show. I'm Josiah.
And I'm Will.
And today we're going to be talking about what the heck is going on in the NFL regarding coaches and staff people and a bunch of random moves that we've been seeing. Some I just did not expect to happen, I'm not going to lie. But here we are. We are here.
There was quite a bit that happened.
Yes.
I feel like this was one of the more, I won't say necessarily chaotic, but one of the most busy coaching carousels we've seen. And I feel like we might see
in a while
quite a bit of turnover. There were some big names fired. But yeah, there's quite a long list here. Between just nuanced coordinators to, again, big changes. And I think the most interesting place to start here is just the AFC North as a whole. For starters,
we got to talk about what the heck is going on here.
Everybody in the AFC North decided to fire their head coach, except for the one team that probably should have, and the Bengals. And the Bengals, they didn't really make any changes, so I just want to put that out there and talk about them briefly, because they didn't make any changes, as the one team who probably was the most obvious team to need to make a change. I mean, everyone kind of made sense. Everyone kind of had rumblings to fair warnings, but the Bengals were the team that was like, Zach Taylor's got to be gone, and somehow he's the only one who kept his job.
We live in a very bad timeline if you're the Bengals. Yeah, I mean, because when the news broke with Harbaugh and Tomlin going, I was like, what the heck? We just got to change a guard, and I just realized this because Mike Tomlin has been with the Steelers for a long, long time. And you think he'd be there for a while, but I've been saying this for years personally. He's never getting back to the Super Bowl, especially with how incompetent he is sometimes. He's still an overall decent head coach. It's just he has not been able to get back to the Super Bowl, unfortunately. Harbaugh, though, the later it's been since his release, it makes more sense now. He's just kind of not been doing what he's normally done. I understand the injuries and everything that they've had recently with the Ravens, but maybe it's just time for a new change of scene, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ravens is a complicated one.
Yeah, that one's a little complicated. It seems like they were pretty set on moving on from Harbaugh. I forget if it was the GM or the owner who had said it in a press conference.
I think it was the owner.
But they had said that if Luke makes the field goal, they go to the playoffs. How much longer would Harbaugh had been the coach? And they said probably just another week.
One week, yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, that makes it seem like they just didn't have a lot of faith in him going into the postseason. But he's definitely had his shortcomings, and I think uh, diving deeper into the Ravens, I guess specifically first, it makes a lot like I can understand it. There was a lot of shell shock for me, especially as a Ravens fan, in moving on from Harbaugh, just because he's been there so long and he had been a pretty successful coach. He was like similar to Tomlin, had always put out a really competitive team, and it had a lot of really good teams, but he never like after his Super Bowl wasn't quite able to get back there, and so it was weird where it's like and again for reasons why I also think Mike Tomlin is a really good coach and was a little surprised to actually see them move on from him. I guess it was he kind of went out on his own, but
Yeah, he resigned.
Harbaugh, yeah, they're both really good coaches, and obviously two different perspectives. As Tomlin's going to take time away from coaching, he might be done with coaching altogether, while Harbaugh changes scenery, which we'll get to in a minute. But the Ravens move on from Harbaugh, and they go out and hire Jesse Minter, who is the defensive coordinator from the Chargers. So he has worked his in the NFL has only ever worked for Jim or John Harbaugh. He worked for John back in the day, but he's been with Jim Harbaugh since Michigan, and he's actually pitched out a pretty good defense the past few years. It is I will admit the one concern I have as far as being a Ravens fan with him is like again stats are good all on defense. It is his first head coaching job, which I mean, which you get with coordinators, but there's always that concern of like leadership and such how that works because there's a big shift from working a defensive coordinator job, any coordinator job, to a head coaching job. Different levels of responsibility. So obviously that's going to be the thing to see with him, but Ravens have been pretty good with their coaching hires, so I'll have to see. But he had he was top 10 in pretty much top 10 defenses the past couple of years.
Yeah, I was supposed to say overall. Yeah, top
Yeah.
10 defenses overall, including everything. So he's been pretty consistent for the fact, but like you said, sometimes it takes a little bit for coordinators to get used to the head coaching job or not at all. I mean, you saw Mike McDonald, only a couple of years as head coach, and he already took him to the Super Bowl. So
Yeah. I mean,
didn't take long.
that's just making the right hire. Again, there's a lot that you have to see behind the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and not just, oh, can you coach a defense? I will admit it is nice to kind of get a guy out there who, you know, can who is like a defensive mind. Harbaugh was never a offensive or defensive mind in particular. He was kind of just a coach's coach and a player's coach, where he's really good at developing talent, working with his coaches, and he produced some pretty good talents in. And this is where I think it's a really interesting parallel is he produced Mike McDonald, and Ravens move on from Harbaugh. Mike McDonald, 2 years removed, like you mentioned, goes and wins a Super Bowl. So it kind of feels like they're trying to mimic that in some way with a guy who kind of is, again, he's rooted in Harbaugh systems. So starting with the Minter hire again, moving on from Harbaugh is like there's positives and negatives to it. It's a big high risk, high reward sort of thing.
Oh, easily.
But the Minter hire I do like. I think he's one of the better hires of of the carousel.
The season that is the carousel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't really touch on it, but the Browns moving on from Stefanski. I know some people were upset by it. Most people weren't. Mostly because it was just kind of time to move on from him. I like him as a head coach, but I understand the frustration with him, like, not. Oh, what is it? I think they were more concerned about his time management and a couple other things, but Yeah,
I
I mean they go ahead and hire was it Tom McCocken as their head coach?
It was Todd Monken, the former
Monken.
Ravens offensive coordinator. Um, the Browns are such a head case. There's so much that goes on here behind the scenes. There's a few teams where, I think three teams in particular, personally, that I thought were just like absolute head cases and absolute like chaotic storylines behind it. Browns are one of them. Browns were one of the teams that, you know, you fire Stefanski again. I get it. It was a down year, not a great year, or a great couple of years. But he also, again, he was coach of the year. He's two-time coach of the year in 2020 and 2023. He brought you to the playoffs, got you a playoff win. He's been one of the best coaches you've had in a long time. I kind of get moving on from him, but you go and hire Todd Monken, who, I mean, he's had a lot of really good seasons. This last year wasn't the greatest um, for him in Baltimore. He didn't. There was Ravens fans calling for his head for a decent amount of the year, and
Yeah.
to kind of just pick him up. But the Browns have been such a mess. They brought in so many guys who, you know, didn't want to come back for second interviews. There are some guys who didn't want to come in for a first interview even. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
an absolute mess. There was the whole debacle of Jim Schwartz, who is their defensive coordinator, has been really good for them, and it between like rumors and stuff, it seems like they had implied that he had a chance at the head coaching job, but he never felt like he really got that chance. And between just butting heads, he resigns. And so they lose this defensive coordinator that was really good for them because they've had a really good defense the past few years. And so now you're coming in with Todd Monken again, pretty solid offensive coordinator if you look over his tenure. Um, Again, this last year wasn't the best, but that's your offensive mind. But this defense that has been so good, you lose your defensive coordinator. They bring in Mike Rudenberg, in amidst the Jim Schwartz dilemma and everything. He was the defensive pass game coordinator for the Falcons last year, and then before that he was
Yeah,
the
he
Jets
was.
linebacker coach.
Yeah.
He hasn't been I mean, again, what he did in Atlanta, there's a little bit of optimism. But the
Yeah.
fact that you let Schwartz go, you move on from two-time coach of the year and pick up Todd Monken, uh, and your only real like optimistic point is like, hey, he wanted Shadur. That was something that like was a storyline when he was at the Ravens. Is he tried to get Shadur? Now he has him, but there's like so much with the Ravens, or not with the Ravens, with the Browns that is just a major head scratcher to me. And
Yeah.
I do have grades on especially like teams with. I graded the team's coach or the team's hires, but mostly with the ones with head coaching changes, and yeah, the Browns for me they got they got my lowest. I give them an F on the moves that they made.
I mean, it's the Browns. What else do you expect from them? I mean, because, like, don't get me wrong. I like cheering for the Browns when they're good. But, like, these recent moves that they've been doing, it's been really confusing. And I truly want to believe that, like, there's just something weird going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And the fact that they got Shador Sanders, because they're not. I mean, they need the attention, and they're hoping to get something out of Shador or whatever quarterback they're going to pick up from this draft again. But yeah, I don't know. The Browns are very confusing, so something's got to click for them. They have a great defense. They're just wasting it again.
It's just another year where I just don't know if I believe in the Browns. I
No.
Stefanski was a really good coach. the Browns were just an abomination of a team. I can understand moving. I can kind of understand moving on from him, but moving on from 2-time Coach of the Year for Todd Monken, who again his first 2 years in Baltimore, he was pitching top 5 offenses. But this last year, the offense just looked so dry. And
Oh yeah.
I I don't know if there's like he seems like maybe the guy who could have a solid first year but burn out after another year or two. So Browns, I think are in, I think that I'm looking at this. I don't like the moves they made. I don't necessarily like the firing. I don't like the hiring replacement. And then again, the whole Jim Schwartz to Mike Rudenberg. It's not the guy. It's not that the guys they got were bad. It's more.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a major downgrade with the talent in the coaching talent that they had, and so this just feels like a major step back for a team that is trying to get back on track. So Browns, I don't have a good grade for them. Um, I didn't give my grade for the Ravens, but with the Jesse Minter hire and the acquisition of Declan Doyle and Anthony Weaver, Anthony Weaver had some good years, some not so good years. He's familiar with Baltimore. And then also, again, Declan Doyle, he was the OC for Chicago. They had a top 10 offense, but he's the OC behind Ben Johnson. So how much does he actually pick up on that? But
It's true.
I did grade the Ravens at a B plus, um, as one of the better team coach changes. But the last team of the AFC North in the Steelers, now that now that's a story. um,
That's just a that's just a mess of itself after the retirement of Tom
yeah, so
uh, Tomlin.
Tomlin and the Steelers parting ways. It makes sense. I can understand it, but the and the reason why I have the grade that I have, this is almost the flip of the Browns, where it's not really the fact that these guys moved on. Like Tomlin was about the only good coach you had, and he was working again not with a great roster, but it's basically just Tomlin there, and he moves on, and it's partially his own decision. So I'm not faulting the Steelers there. For the Steelers, it was more the guys you got instead. Where this is your
Yeah.
hiring is where I'm scratching my head. You reason why you wanted to move on from Tomlin, couldn't win in the playoffs and couldn't have anything more than like at least recently more than a 9-8, 10-7 season. You go out and you get Mike McCarthy, who is by many been deemed the offensive minded Mike Tomlin. He's got 18 years under his belt, and he had some pretty good years with the Packers. He went, but like if you look at what he did, latter half of the his tenure with the Packers and what he did with Dallas, he's a good regular season coach. Maybe averages a little bit over that 9-8, 10-7. He might be more like an 11-6, maybe 12-5 kind of guy. But he went 1-3 in the playoffs with Dallas, and this doesn't solve your issue. Yes, he's won a Super Bowl. So did Tomlin. You're writing on a guy who can win in the regular season, like Mike Tomlin, and gets you to the playoffs, and you're writing off of the fact that he has won a Super Bowl just a while ago. It like the parallels are there. He is again more of an offensive minded guy. You wonder if that kind of fixes the issues, and maybe there's rumblings Aaron Rodgers might stick around. Mike McCarthy's familiar with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe it's a thing there, but I
Maybe.
mean, if you just look at that alone, it feels like you replaced Mike Tomlin with an offensive minded Mike Tomlin. You wonder, okay, you go get an offensive minded guy. Who did they bring in on the defense? They go out and get Patrick Graham. 2019, Patrick Graham was with the Miami Dolphins, and he had a bottom three defense with them. Now he did go to the Giants. He had a top 10 defense in 2020, but then he had a bottom 15, so bottom half of the league defense in 2021, and then he was with the Raiders from 22 to 25. And he had one good season. And the only other thing you can really claim is that he coached Max Crosby. So
yeah, that's kind of about it for him.
This is one where it feels like the guys you moved on to were just not great. Even if you look at the offensive coordinator, Brian Angelico, I think is how his name is pronounced, but he has basically only ever been a tight end coach. He was the pass game coordinator for the Vikings the past 3 years, but this last year doesn't really provide a lot of optimism with that. So
no, not really.
The Steelers felt like they were a team that was like, hey, we're going to try and reset everything and get new coaches that provide a lot of optimism. It feels like kind of a dream destination in a historic franchise, and this is what they do with it. So I'll let you give your piece, because I know I've talked quite at length about this one, but my grade for the Steelers, I had to go with like a D+, because it just feels like, again, at most a lateral move, if not a decline, because your like coordinators again are head scratchers, and your head coach is not really an improvement from what it looks like. So
when I saw the news that Mike Tomlin retired, I was like, oh gosh darn it. Now we can't have the whole 9-8 joke or 10-7 joke anymore. We can't have the Steelers be mediocre for anymore, because that's all the Steelers were. Ever since 2017, they've been mediocre. You can argue with a brick wall. And then I was like, okay, so they're probably going to go get somebody younger, because there's a bunch of guys out there, decent experience. They kind of do the same thing with Mike Tomlin when they got Mike Tomlin when he was a young head coach. Then he stayed with the Steelers for a long time. I thought they were going to do something like that. And then I saw the news that Mike McCarthy was hired. I think I almost started laughing out loud in a room full of like 3 people, just at random. Because I was like, this is such a Steelers thing to do, because their stinking owner has still not changed. He's too afraid to make change. And you go in and get Mike McCarthy as your head coach, probably just to appease the idea of maybe Aaron Rodgers sticking around just to get that hype back. But other than that, what are we doing? This is really bad timing. I don't think the Steelers are going to be any good next year. They've been mediocre for a long time, but if they're somewhat decent next year, I'd be very surprised, because Rodgers is going on a decline. This is not looking too good if you're the Steelers. So I kind of graded that hiring pretty low as well. I just think it's absolutely hilarious they went to go get Mike McCarthy.
Yeah,
out of all the coaches.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, and admittedly, again, there is the lack of draw as far as where the actual talent is on the offense. But I mean, you figure you could go like, and maybe they wanted to target an offensive guy because that's kind of what's been effective in the league. But the defense you have, you figured would be able to entice someone impressive, maybe like Stefanski. It was a head scratcher, but as someone who
I'm
very
lost for
much
words, dude.
disliked, as someone who dislikes the Steelers, it was almost a sigh of relief because it was like, oh, I thought I was gonna have to actually worry about the Steelers. Not anymore. It's just gonna be more of the same, except maybe a
Like
worse
worse.
like maybe the defense is not as scary. Which when you think of Ravens Steelers, it's pretty like
Defensive
head-butting,
heavy.
very physical. Yeah. And now it's like, well, maybe not. Maybe not
Not
anymore.
anymore.
Um, but moving on from the AFC North, because I talked about, and again, they are the division with like the most turnover by far.
Yeah.
Um, we can move on. We can follow John Harbaugh, who was hired
We
at the
could.
Giants, in wake of the Brian Dable firing. I do think that this is a pretty solid hire for the Giants. He gets to work with this young unit who really just needed an experienced kind of guy and a veteran coach to kind of like rein him in and just develop the guys. Someone who's a players coach, and you bring in Harbaugh again, who does have a pretty impressive resume. Was coach of the year. He's produced a lot of really good coaches, and again, just a strong resume between record, playoff record. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been a good coach. You go and you get Harbaugh, and I think that's I will say I think that is unfortunately the best hire that they have. Where I think that one could even
Mm-hmm.
crack into like A range individually as a hire. But then the Giants go out and they hire Matt Nagy and Denard Wilson. Matt Nagy, if you know any Kansas City fans, has
If
had
you know
his
any
head.
Bears fans,
Well, Bears fans, yes, he didn't. He was a Bears head coach. He had one good year, one coach of the year, but it was his only good year offensively. The defense was the only good thing, really, other than that. When he was head coach, it wasn't pretty. But even if you look at what, again, he's taken over the reins as an offensive coordinator. You look at what he's been with KC since his departure from the Bears, and he had one good year in that time in 2023, and other than that, it seems like Chiefs fans have been begging the Chiefs to just get rid of him, and now the Giants willingly let him in. Again, you have John Harbaugh, who is again he's really good with developing coaches. Matt Nagy's an experienced guy. Maybe they work well together. He's gonna be able to. Nagy's always kind of been really good with quarterbacks, so maybe he develops Jackson Dart. But it's not a super impressive hire. Maybe a change will be good for them. Who knows? Then you look at the defense of coordinator, and they pick up Denard Wilson. Denard Wilson has been the Titans defensive coordinator the past 2 years, and they have been
meh,
below average. They were below
they've been
average
pretty
this
bad.
last year, and they were top three in defensive yardage in 2024. Not not really much optimism, but again, Giants have a lot of yearly young talent. They've got a pretty good roster that they just have to flesh out. You got to see what happens here, but originally they get Harbaugh, and I love it. I love the hiring for them, but these coordinator hires dropped this a bit for me, and I have them actually graded as a B.
That's fair. I mean, hiring Harbaugh, I think. I mean, it's all right. It's decent. I understand the veteran aspect of a head coach, but just out of recent memory of him, it's kind of hard to see what kind of happens there, especially with the addition of those two coordinators, Nagy particularly. Um, I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens because I don't know what kind of team we're gonna get next year. They better not ruin Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo. I will
I
be
mean,
very upset if they do.
to be fair though, it feels like, you know, bringing in a competent head coach, someone who's proven, and someone again, he's a veteran head coach, so he knows how to deal with these guys. It feels like something that can help them mature, and I feel like especially with Scottaboo and Dart, that's kind of the thing is maturing, because they're fun, they're energetic, but I feel like there's a little bit of maturity and also taking care of themselves, because health has obviously been the biggest issue with those two. Um,
Yeah, Scottaboo.
but Harbaugh seems like the guy who could potentially rein them in. There are obviously the concerns of, yes, he's not been able to win in the playoffs, or he's not been able to get the job done in the playoffs recently. But it's a change of scenery. He might be able to get the pieces that he needs, and he's got Malik Neighbors there too. Like he has more than just Lamar Jackson and I guess Derrick Henry, but like there's more optimism in a young team, and
Yeah.
maybe they don't. I don't think you're gonna see them, maybe win a Super Bowl in the next 2-3 years per se, but I think you could see a really big turnaround for the Giants this next year, assuming these coordinators don't completely blow the team for them. Because I do
Yeah.
think Harbaugh will be a good change for them, and I think with some good roster building over this offseason, I think we could see a really good Giants, like actually a good competitive Giants team this year. Um,
That would be nice.
yeah, it'd be great, and I'm excited to see what Harbaugh can do. That's a really fun hiring. But staying on the topic of Harbaugh, because when Harbaugh got fired, there was a lot of rumblings as to where he could go. He was kind of the big name in the coaching carousel, and that includes a team that feels like just fired their coach to try and get Harbaugh, and that is the Miami Dolphins, who they had said that they were going to keep McDaniels, which was a head scratcher. He hadn't been doing the job, getting the job done. He hadn't been really doing well at all.
Anything? No.
And I will say, firing McDaniels, I don't think is necessarily a bad move. But when you do it to try and get your guy in John Harbaugh and you miss out, then you wonder, okay, what are they going to do now? And they went out and hired Jeff Halfley. And
Yep.
and this is where I have a problem because Halfley he's not a bad coach. He has been working with a pretty good roster with Green Bay the past couple of years. I don't think he was ever a NFL level coach before Green Bay. He did a
I
pretty
don't
good
think he
job,
was.
but it just doesn't sit well when, I mean, again, on paper his defenses have been pretty good, but the way the Green Bay defense dropped off after Micah Parsons went out this last year makes it feel like it was a lot less Halfley and a lot more just Micah Parsons. So
True.
again, and you have someone who's not super experienced in the NFL, there's just a lot of uncertainty with him, and that just it doesn't feel like a great move. On top of that, they go out to get Bobby Slowick as their OC, who hasn't been too impressive. Um, I honestly, I just again, the whole missing out on Harbaugh is just, I mean, it's comedic, but it's also a big punch in the gut for the Dolphins. I actually, with the moves they made, had graded this at about a D, just because I don't have the confidence quite yet in Halfley.
Yeah, it's not looking too good at Miami. Don't expect them to be good anytime soon with that team because it's just you're dealing with a bunch of people leaving right now, which we'll get to at some point. It's
There we
just a
go.
mess over there. I don't think anybody really would want to coach over there except maybe Harbaugh, but like you said, when you miss out, sucks to suck.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins are going to be a team who are going to have to go through a rebuild. They're moving on from Tua. and they released Tyreek Hill. It's going to be a lot of turnover, and there's a lot of trade rumors, a lot of changes there, and it feels like it's going to be a period of the roster is not going to be in a great spot. Probably they're going to rebuild everything. We're going to have to see how good Halfley is, but I with probably not a great roster, probably not even really a good roster going into this next year. And again, a coach that's got two pretty solid years in the
Mm-hmm.
NFL as a defensive coordinator. I don't have the faith in them, and so I had this pretty low, but I don't. Does it compare to the mess that is the Bills situation? If you look, I will say, if you look strictly at the coaching changes, I will say they fired McDermott. It's not my favorite move. It's not a great move, but
No.
they've not been able to get over the hump. Fair. You hired Joe Brady, who's been pretty solid. He's been pretty good. He put up they had the number one rush offense this last year, and he's
Yep.
done pretty good working with Josh Allen. So I understand that, but when your issue is that you can't get over the hump, I don't feel like staying in house for your head coach is really the way to go. That's
No.
where that kind of head scratcher comes in. Now, again, beyond that, they go out and they get Pete Carmichael, who was a long time offensive coordinator for the Saints. Um, he was really good with the Saints while Breeze was there because it's Drew Brees. But after that, it was rough because the Saints have been a mess. You give them Josh Allen, I think they do pretty well. They get Jim Leonard. Um, all that stuff. I actually don't mind. Again, the Joe Brady one is like this doesn't feel like it actually changes anything, but the coordinator moves I don't actually mind that much. I think these are some pretty decent moves. Right there, I could see this being like a C plus B minus, but then there's I get the Brandon Bean, the GM, who has been another guy who has just been had his head called for several times by Bills fans and Bills Mafia. Instead of they keep him and promote him to president of football relations. And so it feels like Brandon Bean's kind of this issue until we get the press conference with I believe is Tom Pagula, who's the owner,
I think it was. Yeah.
and this is where I have concerns. And this is where I I don't know how much faith I'm going to have in the Bills going forward because again,
Yeah.
promoting Brandon Bean was already like a head scratcher. I was like, what is that? You fire McDermott. It's like, okay, he's a really good coach, but I guess you haven't been able to get over the hump, and other teams are making the change. But the talks that he had, he thrown Keon Coleman under the bus several times while he's still on roster, and I know, and I think that's what you were referencing. In
Yeah.
that's a mess. But then there's also, and this is actually, I think this is actually what drops this down so much for me, is in the same press conference, Pagula had said that he didn't like the way McDermott had handled the locker room. He didn't like the way he had been talking and responding to authority, and he didn't like and the fact that he lost the game against the Broncos. Those three things were kind of what led to his firing, and he felt like he was over it. But at the same time, several times in that interview, he had mentioned was it Brandon Cooks, I believe, was the target in overtime in that game. That got ruled
I don't
in.
remember.
I believe it got ruled an interception. He several times referred to it as, "Oh, that should have been a catch. and we should have won the game several times. And where this becomes a big question mark is, so you should have won the game. You're saying you should have won the game and should have been a catch. That game should have been a win. You should have been in the AFC Championship. That is what he said. That's what he said several times. Yet, you're saying you're firing McDermott largely because of this loss was the one that put him over. So, you're firing him for for something you disagree with the refs.
I have no idea, dude. His brain is super weird right now.
It feels immature, and it feels like, I mean, you can say a curse, but this feels like, oh, maybe ownership is actually the issue here, because that doesn't feel like it feels childish, and it makes the moving on from McDermott feel that much weirder, and it makes everything feel so much more just and the situation in Buffalo, I have this like concerned feeling that Buffalo is going to start to just take a dive the next couple of years, and I hate to see it for
fall flat.
Yeah, I hate to see it for guys like Josh Allen, James Cook, and Khalil Shakir, and so many guys that are like, I do like the Bills. I like the team they've built, but with everything, with the Bills, again, the coaching hirings themselves, I would put at B minus C plus, but with the stuff with the owner, and it doesn't even feel like Bean is the problem, but it feels like Pagula. Just everything there. I had to grade this as a C, and that's me being optimistic, because
yeah,
I don't know with them anymore.
It's a bad situation, and yeah, they're gonna be stuck in the gutter for a while, and that's just kind of how it's gonna be for the foreseeable future until either the ownership fixes their issue or something else happens. Like, I don't know, something random has to happen to change everything. But yeah. It's a mess down in Buffalo.
It very much is a mess, but to move on and get through some of these other hires that don't have as much drama and can kind of just be more straightforward hires, and we can kind of grade these a little quicker, is starting, we'll look at the Falcons. Moved on from Raheem Morris and hired Kevin Stefanski.
Took them long enough.
I'm so glad they moved on from Morris. I love that they went out and got Stefanski. People are like drooling at the idea of Stefanski coaching Kyle Pitts. He's gonna have Bijan. It feels like a great match. Really, the only question there is, to me, is like a quarterback. But yeah, you go out, you get two-time coach of the year, guy who went 1-2 in the playoffs. He does have a losing record as a head coach, but again, it's the Browns. Are we surprised?
Well, I can do so much there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they got some promise over there, so I'm just glad Morris is fired, because they needed a change of guard there, because he wasn't going to improve at all. Stefanski, he's got a pretty decently high ceiling for his tenure there, so hopefully he can make the most of it. And he better use Kyle Pitts to the best of his ability.
Yeah. But I really love this hire for the Falcons. I think this is going to be really good for them, and I think this might actually make the Falcons a truly competitive, like, not a NFC South competitive, but like a truly competitive team. And so I graded the Falcons at a B plus. I really like the moves. And just need a couple more fixes. So
yeah. Hopefully the NFC South can actually be a little competitive for once. Like, it's kind of annoying to just see everyone suck in that division. But anyway, I was gonna say, because Cardinals are an interesting case too. Not much
Car-
drama. Just what are they gonna do?
yeah. Again, another team that's going through a rebuild, and seems like they're moving on from Kyler Murray. So we'll have to see what their quarterback situation is. But as far as coaching goes, you fired Jonathan Gannon. I think that was the move. I can't disagree at all with firing Jonathan Gannon. His tenure is up. Good firing. Yes. They go out and they hire Mike LaFleur. And I will say, when
Yep.
I first heard this news, I thought this was actually going to be a pretty solid hire for them. And then
Yeah.
I took kind of a deeper look into Mike LaFleur. And admittedly, coaches grow as well. It's not just players, but coaches also improve over the years. But looking at his tenure as an offensive coordinator, he had the number one offense. Like, it was pretty much undisputed the number one offense this last year.
Mm-hmm.
But looking the past couple of years, wasn't the best offense last year. It was pretty middle of the pack. 2023 had a top 10 offense. But you look at the Rams. You have Puka Nacua. You had Cooper Kupp a few years ago. You had Devontae Adams this year. It's just like, this is stacked offense. So to look at a sample size outside of the Rams, I looked at before, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Jets from 21 to 22. He had a bottom 10 offense both years. So you go from the mess of the Jets to the stacked offense of the Rams. And it brings into question, what is Mike LaFleur actually? And then on top of that, can he actually coach? Like, can he be a head
Yeah. It'll
coach?
be it'll be a huge testing ground for him because I he might be able to do things there. So it also kind of depends on who's staying there. And then you also have to remember that Nathaniel Hackett is their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that was the other one. Is even though he's the offensive coordinator under an offensive minded head coach, he might not even be calling plays. But Nathaniel Hackett has not really been impressive since he left Green Bay. So head scratcher there. The other thing with the Cardinals is this also feels like a team who lost out in the sweepstakes. It feels like they were in the sweepstakes for Clint Kubiak, and it feels like they lost out there, and so you get stuck with Mike LaFleur. I'm I'm going to say straightforward, I'm not super impressed, especially when I looked deeper into Mike LaFleur. And so I do have them actually graded as a D plus, and they just feel like a team that is back in just a mess. And like I just don't know if they're ever gonna get back on track. Um, but yeah, I have them as a D plus. Not super impressed with the coaching carousel for them. We only have two other head coaching hires, or teams that made head coaching changes. The
Oh yeah,
aforementioned
found one.
Raiders
Yep,
fired Pete Carroll.
Raiders.
Needed to. He just feels like out
Yes.
of touch. You go out, you get Clint Kubiak, who is probably he was probably one of the most highly anticipated coaching hires. He kind of almost feels like the Ben Johnson of this year. Uh, so right away, great. Kubiak, with Minnesota in 2021 had a top 10 passing offense. 2024 wasn't the best. He had that hot start, but we also know what the Saints were that year. Um, Derek Carr had injuries, and they just couldn't get on track after having a really hot start to the year. But the Saints have been, again, a mess on offense and
Yes, they have
partially
been a
defense.
mess.
So it wasn't statistically a great year, but I still feel like he did a pretty good job. And here's an interesting thing to look at here. But again, worked with the Saints. Then he goes to Seattle, coaches Seattle, wins the Super Bowl with Seattle, has a top five offense, a top five rush offense, and a top 10 or top 15 passing offense. Really good offense. And I made this notice little, like I noticed this little thing, and he has worked with Rashid Shaheed the past 2 years, and Rashid Shaheed potentially might be a free agent. And I'm very curious to see if he potentially foregoes staying with Seattle and follows Kubiak to Las Vegas, because those two together have been a lot of fun. But Kubiak hire, I really like it. They went out and got Rob Leonard, who was the run game defensive coordinator and the defensive line coach for the Raiders the past few years. They promoted him, and so we'll see how that looks. Um, we'll see how the defense looks. But again, this is a team that's going to have the first overall pick. Kubiak's just going to get to pick his guy. We expect it probably to be Mendoza, but we'll see. But overall, for the Raiders, I love that they were able to go out and get Kubiak. Obviously, still kind of a mess of an organization, but I do have this graded as an A minus because I do have a lot of faith kind of in Kubiak. So
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think Kubiak can do pretty good things there, especially with what they can do with their draft picks and everything. So they have pieces. They just need a foundation to build upon, and I think that they can and they will probably do that soon. So
yeah, and again, that number one overall pick is going to do numbers for them. They're going to be able to build a roster, and going into the final hire, head coaching wise, is the Titans. Moved on from Brian Callahan.
yes,
Much needed decision. You go out, you get Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh, I'm just uncertain. Great defensive coordinator. He did it with the 49ers. And then he obviously took the job with the Jets, and then he went back and was able to do it again with the 49ers. You just create this strong defense amidst many, many injuries. Robert Saleh has done a great job as a defensive coordinator, particularly with the 49ers. The question really comes into, hey, we've seen him be a head coach with the Jets. It's the Jets, admittedly. So, questions there. But it didn't look great. So there's a little bit. I'm not going to say that he's a horrible coach because of what he did with the Jets, but I can't also completely discount his tenure with the Jets. So I have that kind of in the middle. I do like they went out and got Brian Dable, who may not have been the best head coach, but I do think he is a really good offensive mind. And working with Camp Ward, what Saleh and Dable can do, I really like. And I think this team can be a turnaround. But again, I just have the concerns as far as Saleh. How good of a head coach he really is. So I do have this as a B minus, but I do see this potentially being like, looking back at it, this could be an A to A plus kind of higher, and I could see them having like a Commanders kind of turnaround with this head coaching change.
There was a offensive coordinator that I wanted to mention.
Who was hired?
The Chiefs.
Yes, that was one that I was going to address, a few of the coordinator hires, but I'll let you get into that one because yeah.
Yeah, so the Kansas City Chiefs have hired Eric Bieniemy. He was coming back from the Bears as a running backs coach. He's really good. Him coming back to KC kind of feels like a final push with the original trio that is Kelsey, Mahomes, and Reed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of getting at right now, but I don't know what exactly they're aiming for here because, I mean, you saw how bad the Chiefs were this last year. They didn't really have a number one receiver. Their number one receiver was a tight end who couldn't really catch the ball half the time. I can't tell what they're going for here, but I understand the necessity to hire him again. I think it's a decent hire, but it's not saving grace kind of hire, you know?
It's one of these moves. This is one, like, I graded a few of the coordinator hires, not all of them, but some of the ones that I thought were relevant moves, and this is one that I wanted to look at. There's there is a trend where coordinators that go somewhere, like they do successfully somewhere, they go somewhere else to try and find success. They don't, and they come back, like Matt Nagy, the guy who Bieniemy will be replacing. Nagy did not have a great tenure in his return. Now he was originally, that is what got him hired as the Bears head coach, was when he was with the Chiefs before. He didn't have a great return.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that being the case, but Bieniemy really did a great job with the offense. And when he
Oh
left,
yes.
it did feel like the offense took a bit of a hit. They again did have one good year, but it just feels like I think Bieniemy is truly a really good offense coordinator. I think someone who also kind of like actually deserved a shot as a head coach, but never got it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he has a really good mix with Patrick Mahomes. I think the Chiefs are picking top 10. Their offense was not great this last year. And this could be, like you mentioned, the thing that puts them over and gives them another chance. I think this is all around for the Chiefs a win. Yeah, again, move on from Matt
Oh,
Nagy,
easily.
who was like again they had roster issues, but Nagy was not helping. Bieniemy seems like a
No.
solution, and so I actually
Yeah.
really do like this hire, and I actually graded this one, and I give him an A minus. A couple others, 49ers. I know we
Oh
were
yeah.
giving them a lot of crap, but they did go out amid Robert Saleh getting a head coaching job. They bring in Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris actually did a pretty good job as a defensive coordinator for the Rams. So they go out and
Oh
get
yeah.
Raheem Morris. I actually do like this hire. Again, wasn't a great head coach. And this has been
But
we've
he's a good coordinator.
I think he's a pretty good defensive coordinator, and the 49ers have a knack for. I mean, Shanahan's been great at bringing in really good defensive coordinators. You look at D'Amico Ryans, you look at Robert Sala, and I know there's a few other guys that I can't think of off the top of my head, but he's another coach who's done a really good job of producing defensive coordinators and coaches in general. Raheem Morris, I think he can go in and is he going to be Robert Sala? Probably not. But if the 49ers can
No.
be healthier than they were this year, that defense might still be able to remain at a top tier level. Um,
Yeah.
so I gave that an A minus because I liked that hire for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Easily.
yeah, you can give. Sorry, I didn't.
Oh no. No, I was just gonna say Raheem Morris. Didn't like him as a coach, but he was a great coordinator. Um, yeah, I think Shanahan knows what he's doing, but I'm always not a fan of Shanahan and what he does as a head coach. But that's just my gripe with him. Other than
Yeah.
that, the 49ers are going to be really good.
Chargers. They went out and got defensive coordinator Chris O'Leary, who was the defensive coordinator for Western Michigan this last year. Not the most impressive hire. I will admit, I'll say that straight up. Not the most impressive. But they went out and got Mike McDaniels.
They
I
did.
love that for the Chargers. I love that for Justin Herbert. And I you don't give him the opportunity to say, "Hey, go give me all the speed guys," but you give him the opportunity to say, "I'm going to work with this talent." I think he's capable of working with the talent there. Chargers, they do have a good bit of talent, and I think McDaniels can actually really improve this team and potentially make Justin Herbert like a winning guy in the playoffs too. I'm excited to see what he can do. So I put the Chargers at a B. Packers, they go out and they get Jonathan Gannon. Again, not a great head coach, but what he did with the Eagles, he's not Vic Fangio, who's another name that I'm surprised hasn't gotten really any looks. But he had he built a really good defense with the Eagles, who when they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, he built a really good defense. And I think you put
Yeah.
him and you give him Micah Parsons and the rest of the Packers defense, he might build a scary defense for the Packers. But I do have it as a B plus. I like that hire for them. And then the last one, there's the Buccaneers, who no offensive coordinator in Zach Robinson. You made some changes with your special teams, getting Danny Smith, and then went on and got Chandler Whitmer. But I think the biggest thing that the Buccaneers have done is not fire Todd Bowles.
F.
A bit of a tangent, obviously. This is one
Yes.
of the longer videos we've had in a minute, but there's a lot here. We got some fun stuff coming up. Obviously, combines coming up. The teams are making their franchise tags and resign, and their resign period as free agency is going to open up. This has been NFL coaching changes of the 2026 of 2026. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the change of landscape of the NFL coaching carousel. Obviously, stuff's been a little slow to come out just because offseason slows down, picks up, slows down, and so it's not constant action. But things will likely pick up a bit over the next month or two, and we look forward to covering all that stuff and getting stuff out there for you guys. Thank you for your patience and sticking around for videos such as these. So,
Yes.
to close out, appreciate all of you being here, and we enjoy making these videos for you as always, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.
See ya.
Bye.